Hey everybody, Jay Weidner, Reality Check. Thanks for watching. Merry Christmas, happy holidays to everybody. This will go out on Christmas Day, I do believe. So hope you guys had a great Christmas. We always like Christmas because that means the light's coming back after all this darkness. And I'm welcoming it back, believe me, because it has been a dark, dark winter so far. Anyway, I am back and I'm with Karim Koussa. He is a writer, and I want to make sure that I have his Amazon page up here, and I want to make sure that he has written many books. I will put the link to his Amazon page, The Kabbalistic Visions and the Secret of the Phoenician Tradition, Jesus the Phoenician, Pythagoras, the mathematician, the Phoenician Code, which is really, really a good one. So I've read most of these books. He takes a fictional approach to a very interesting historical fact that no one talks about. And so, hey, Karim, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Jay, for having me on the show.
Yeah, so you live in Lebanon. Just want to clear this up before we go into the good stuff. How is life these days in Lebanon?
Well, the situation is not good since like 2 years, 3 years ago, we have a political and economical crisis hitting Lebanon.
Yeah.
And we have also the blast that almost destroyed the capital of Lebanon, Beirut, 2 years ago. And we're trying to recover, so it's a bit, it's dark, we're still in the darkness now
Yeah,
here in
yeah. You
Lebanon.
guys, you've had like 4 decades, 4 or 5 decades of bad stuff happening, and I feel sorry for you because it's such a beautiful country and one of the nicest places on earth, really. The weather is just perfect, and such a history. So what people don't realize is that Lebanon used to be called another name. It's called Phoenicia, and it was uh, uh, where Lebanon and Israel are now, all the way on the eastern side of the Mediterranean. And this area has this incredible history of not just the Baalbek and the giant stones that are there that are unexplainable, how anybody could have ever carved these stones out, but also the great cedar forests of Lebanon, which is what I believe. Okay, here's my theory. I think you agree with me. In my office, I've got a pyramid. Somebody gave it to me years ago at a conference, and it's a pyramid. It's like the pyramid of power, you might say. All right. And so it's got,
Yeah,
like the Federal Reserve is near the bottom. And then, we've got this and that. And then at the very top, it says the Canaanites. And I thought, the Canaanites. Now, why did they put the Canaanites up on top of the power grid, whoever made this pyramid? Um, and the answer is because um, the first people who built ships that could go out into the open sea are the winners. They're the winners. They're the ones who win. They know where everything is. They have their maps. They know the languages of the people they visit. They know where the forests are, where the great fertile lands are, where the good mining is. They win. And it looks to me, with my rudimentary understanding of history, that the Phoenicians are the winners of, and that's why the Canaanites, because Canaan is right where Phoenicia was. That's why the Canaanites are hailed as the people who rule the world. That's what I feel. I feel that whoever, and I don't think that the Phoenicians are, and I think you agree with me, they're not just centered in Lebanon. They advanced. They became the rising phoenix of, they would rise from one place to another. And you can tell where they have been by the Navy. So
yeah,
if,
yeah, definitely, definitely.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
when you say Yeah, when you say Canaanite, it means the Phoenicians, so it's the same people. So
Same people.
Canaanite and the Phoenicians, yeah, it's the same thing. And they not only they were builders, great builders of monuments and temples and cities. They were also great seafarers, and
The
and you know
greatest.
they everywhere they sailed across the world to the Americas, to
Yep.
Europe,
Yep.
and to Africa. They settled and built uh, temples and cities there, and they transmitted the knowledge they had in building and in a lot of stuff. So basically, they were everywhere.
Yeah, and my good friend Brian Forrester, he lives in Peru, and he has a museum of these mummies that they found in Peru, and they have red hair, and they've taken the DNA and they've analyzed it, and they came from the Middle East, right? So somebody sailed all the way to the east coast of Peru thousands of years ago and had a Middle Eastern DNA in them. And this isn't, it's not just here. He's found it in Hawaii, the original people of Hawaii. Also, there's in California, the Chumash people talk about coming from boats. And all around the world, we find these same stories of people coming from the east for here in America and landing here in boats. And of course, then we have the great copper mines of Upper Michigan and the St. Lawrence Seaway. Somebody sailed in and literally mined tons of copper and took it out of here. And we know the Phoenicians were really the purveyors of the Bronze Age. They brought the Bronze Age to the world.
Yeah,
And it could be argued that they had traveled to India and seen iron smelting and secretly brought it back to Lebanon and created the Iron Age also, but they kept it secret for a few hundred years. What's brilliant and what I like about your view of the Phoenicians, what's brilliant about the Phoenicians is that they kept it all secret. So
yeah, definitely. So there is a tradition. There is a tradition that 𝒆𝒏𝒊𝒂 mentions in her book. I don't know if it was Ice Unveiled or Secret Doctrine.
yeah,
It mentions the connection between the Phoenicians and ancient India, and this route they used to use to bring stuff from there. So the connection is there,
yep,
and since they were in America, for example, in New Hampshire, they found
yep,
a temple there dedicated to Baal, and it's called the Stonehenge, the American Stonehenge, and they linked
right,
this temple to the Stonehenge in England and back to Beirut. And we have in Beirut, we used to have like 6 stone circles aligned in Beirut, but they are now destroyed, unfortunately. But this could go back to thousands of years ago. So yeah, definitely. And we have mining everywhere. We have mining
yep,
in Britain and Cornwall.
yep.
Uh, so basically, they were doing a lot of stuff.
So so the Phoenicians had a culture where they kept everything kind of interiorized so that it wasn't that Phoenicians didn't ever like to go to war. They were not that kind of people. They had a whole different tact about how they did things with their neighbors that confused their neighbors, but always left Phoenicia kind of untouched. And it was brilliant, and it was really trade. They cemented their relationships with the people around them through trade, especially the Egyptians, and 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 really and truly they were the navy for the Egyptians. The Egyptians had boats, but only for the Nile. They really weren't a
Exactly.
seafaring people, and so they relied on the Phoenicians to bring them back. I'm sure that's where the cocaine mummies, the tobacco that's found in the hairs of the mummies, I'm sure that's the Phoenicians going to South America and bringing stuff back in this brilliant way of trading. And then if you look at the way the world is currently structured, it's structured around those same principles, that we don't really go to war, we do trade. As if this Phoenician idea has now spread into the entire world. And again, the fingerprints of these people are everywhere. And they're not getting any history because they don't want anybody to know. That's the funniest thing of all, is that they could claim, you know, we're the victors of the world, and we conquered the whole world and everything, but they don't. And that's what makes it so fascinating, because they don't really want you to know. And so my theory is, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. There were secretive people. So, for example, in the industry of making ships, so that was like a syndicate for making ships. No one can enter,
right,
except going through like initiation, some form of initiation to understand what he's doing. Or like in the production of the purple dye, that was also secretive. Yep. They did, so it's like the syndicates that we have now. It can go back to the Phoenician way, how they syndicated their work. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and also language. If you go back to the origins of language, it's, you know, the Western languages are all Phoenician origin, as if they, you know, they spread out and they spread their languages all out. And and of course the phoenix is the symbol of the Phoenicians, because they're constantly rising. They're constantly, it looks like they're down and out, and then boom, they rise up somewhere. We look at again, it's really important to look at naval history to understand all of this. So we look at Rome, and Rome had a pathetic navy. It was absolutely pathetic. This is about the time of Alexandria the Great. So Rome is, you know, not a big power. They've got land armies, but they don't have a navy. But then Alexander the Great, he kind of screws with Phoenicia, and Phoenicia doesn't really react to the attack, but all of a sudden, boom, Rome has an incredible navy, like overnight. Rome has this incredible navy, which then conquers Greece, as if the Phoenicians are always using proxies to get what they need. And you can see that also in the Sea Peoples attack on the Mediterranean. It's almost as if, you know, the only people that the Sea Peoples don't touch are the Phoenicians. So you have to wonder, are the Sea Peoples being guided by the Phoenicians? And I think they were. And all the enemies of Phoenicia were attacked by the Sea Peoples and destroyed, and only Phoenicia was left standing. Over and over, we see this same pattern, is what I'm saying, right?
There is a connection between ancient Phoenicia and the Sea People. That I mean, with the it's coming from the connection they had with Ionia and all those ancient places. And the foundations, you feel that the foundation of that culture is coming from the Phoenician, as well as the Greek mythology. I mean, it's coming from the Phoenicians and the Egyptians together. I mean, the Phoenicians and the Egyptians were greatly connected, as if they were brothers. Yeah. So, and this is written in ancient book in Sanchoniathon theology of the Phoenicians. He mentions the brotherly connection between Seduk, who represents the caste of priests with the Phoenicians, and Misor, who is the father of Thoth in the Egyptian mythology.
Right.
And you understand that this is the same culture somehow.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think too. I think that they're interrelated, that the Phoenicians were like the businessmen of for Egypt, and they were the ones that did the trading. so that they brought in all the great stuff that Egypt needed for its civilization, but it was always the Phoenicians who were really running the trade and collecting, collecting money. And what other people don't realize also is that the Phoenicians didn't really want foreigners to come into their homes. So if you met a foreigner in Phoenicia, you'd have to do it at a restaurant or a coffee house or something, whatever they had. And because they didn't want you to see what they had, what they had in their houses, because they were opulent. They had a lot of money, and they were probably the richest people in the Middle East for the time that they were there. And because they had the maps and they had the sea knowledge, they could escape any trouble and go anywhere they wanted to escape trouble. And this brings up something that I've talked about many times, and I want to get your opinion on it, because I really believe that the history of ships and navies is the history of the Phoenicians. Okay, so and so we see that Rome rises and they have this big navy and they conquer the entire Middle East, and then around 400 AD or CE, whatever you want to call it, they Rome basically disappears and turns into the Byzantine Empire, and the Roman navies disappear. And so Rome had achieved, or the Phoenicians had achieved for the Romans, a certain style of seaworthy ships, right? With masts and sails and iron shafts down the middle of the mast to keep it solid in the wind, and incredible technology for the time. And then this technology, the sea-going ship technology, completely disappears from 400 until it reappears in 1400 in Portugal and Spain. So there's a 1,000-year gap where nothing happens. There's no advances in anything with seagoing vessels. You might say, oh well, the Vikings, but the Vikings have exactly the same technology in their boats as did the Romans and the Phoenicians. So there's no advances in the Viking boats. Yes, they're great boats. They're awesome because they're built with that hard oak wood from Norway and Sweden, but there's not really an advancement. They're still using the same thing. So there is no real advancement at all. And so I'm wondering what happened. Did the Phoenicians go underground at that point and begin? That's what I think. I think they found a place where they went underground and began the slow conquering, you might say, of the entire world without telling anyone. And somehow between 400 and 1400, and then they emerge again with the Portuguese and the Spanish but the Portuguese and Spanish also report that they find advanced civilizations in South America and in Mexico and in North America later that were already established before they arrived. So is it of your opinion that the Phoenicians had already pretty much conquered the New World long before the Spanish and the Portuguese arrived?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they arrived much more earlier than the other people to the Americas, and built settlements and transmitted the knowledge they had to the people there, and also the building structure and everything. And I've read. I remember I read a few times about some Indian tribes in Americas that they consider themselves going back to the Phoenicians. Yep. Which is something interesting. Also, there are relics and inscriptions in Brazil, for example, in as I said before, in New Hampshire, in Pennsylvania, there are some relics that shows that the Phoenicians were there thousands of years ago. So that's definitely it's proven. It has been proven. but to your question about where the Phoenicians disappeared from, like I said, 313, 300 something AD.
Yeah,
This is a big question.
it
This is a
really
big
is.
question, really, because yeah, because people usually say that the Phoenicians almost disappeared 300 BC, but no, it's not that. The case is it's not they disappeared in 300 AD, but they moved around secretly because actually, oh, the idea of secret societies, as I was saying before, the secretive syndicates and all that, is somehow Phoenician. So they probably went all around the world because they already know all these
Oh,
navigational routes, and they started somewhere else, underground, to build again. So this is quite interesting.
yeah, and speaking of secret societies, and I wish my ex co-writer Vincent Bridges was still around because he was an expert on this, but he has long passed us world. But when we were investigating French secret societies of like 1100 and 1200, we kept coming up against this weird thing where the French Freemasons were giving themselves not near names. In other words, they would have titles that were nautical ship titles. So this Freemason tradition that we discovered, this alchemical Freemason tradition that we uncovered, that is now, you know, underground or long gone, was all based on ships and shipbuilding and I thought to myself, well, you know, what's going on here? I remember at the time, this is 20 years ago, and I'm thinking, what is this? You know, what is going on? Why are they doing this? Especially like in a town like Bourges in the center of France, which is no ocean around it anywhere, but still they're carrying on this kind of, and even their clothing and stuff was shipped with the things on their shoulders and everything. It was all based on some kind of Navy thing, and so I'm sure that what happened is that the Phoenicians went into Italy and France and probably gave the boat building traditions to the Vikings and to the English, who had a great boat building tradition also, um, and, uh, and quietly, you know, made these places where they could go. And everywhere that you see great navies being formed is where the Phoenicians are going. And I even believe that the Venetians in Italy, because what are they
Yeah,
have canals and boats and it's a whole boat culture, right? Where did they come from? And then we have the whole rise of the um of the return of the alchemical tradition to Europe through the Arabic writings, and you have to wonder where that came from, who passed on these books to be translated, you know. And again, we see that even the alchemical traditions look like they came from the Phoenicians. And again, the most important part about all of this is that no one's saying it except you.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you were right. I mean, Marseille, the the place in France, it's called the Marseille, which means the port of Ile,
Yep.
where the ships used to dock.
Yep.
And even the name Britannica, the name for Britannica, the ancient name is coming from Bartanach, which means the land of tin, where the Phoenicians had a reservoir of tin in Cornwall in England. And definitely, and if you go back to a tradition that nobody noticed, pay attention to it, are the Kabiri that are mentioned as the Kabiri of Samothrace and Phoenicia, and you see them wearing like apron for the way that the Masons wear and having a so besides the tradition that we all know that connects Hiram Abiy and Hiram, the king of Tyre, to the Phoenician, to the Freemasonic lore, and the idea of the resurrection of the third degree, which is quoting the resurrection of the phoenix
Yep.
from its ashes after 3 days. So it's all connected. And definitely the Vikings, I mean, look at the divinities that they have. They have Odin, probably coming from Adon, and
Yep.
they have Thor, which is coming from Thor the Zeblite, or so
Yep.
even the names are similar.
Absolutely.
And definitely, yeah,
It's absolutely fascinating because once you start doing an etymological extraction of all these words, it all comes down to Phoenicians, and so you're the Phoenicians, and you're living in 2500 BC, and you've got your ships, and they're going out all over the world, and everybody's jealous of you, and you're keeping everything a secret. So you would have to create some kind of secret society to protect your secrets because you've got the secrets. You know where everything in the world is. You probably can speak 20 different languages that no one else can. So you are the top dog, but if you keep it secret, then you can maintain your power. Whereas if you start announcing who you are and what you've done and bragging about it, then you're going to invite enemies to come in and kill you. And the Phoenicians were far smarter than doing anything dumb like that. And that's why we're talking about them, but nobody really knows about them.
yeah. Actually, the history book about the Phoenicians and all the articles that have been written about them, it's like a two-dimensional narration. But the
Yeah.
Phoenicians, I was saying to Johnny the other day that it's go back layers upon layers of mystery and secrecy that has been, I mean, at the core of their cultural. I mean, because they have to do that because they're not warriors. They never were warriors.
Never.
War was against that principle. They wanted to trade with people. They wanted to
That's right.
open the world, uh, as if becoming the whole world is becoming one village.
Yep.
So they created the ideas of bringing the world together while keeping their secret intact. And everyone who knows the secret, there has to be initiated into that trade or that trade. And therefore, machinery is a craft.
Yeah, I agree completely with you. They when people would try to take over land in Phoenicia, the Phoenicians wouldn't go attack them. They'd go out there and negotiate with them, and sometimes just pay them off. Say, here's some money, go leave, and we'll buy your land from you. And they would never do the confrontation thing at all. That was not what they did. And you can see that the same exact kind of thinking is going on today by the powers that be. They don't want, that's why they're so angry at Putin, because there's got to be a better way than go and attack somebody, right? And there has to be a better way than that. And I'm not saying that Putin is guilty or anything. I'm not taking any sides on the war. I don't care. I know we did a lot of terrible things to get everybody angry. I'm talking about our side.
Yeah.
Did everything, and we're guilty of a lot of things. And I do not. I condemn the foreign policy of the United States for the most part. I really do. But so today we have a government that's built, a world government that's being attempted to be built right now, and it's being built on the same exact things that drove the Phoenicians: trade, friendship between countries, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying that the people that are in charge today are probably still the Phoenicians.
Well, that's an ambitious guess. I don't know if that is. I mean, maybe they're playing behind the curtains through their secret knowledge or that. But I mean, in Lebanon, when you look at Lebanon today, it's a mess.
Yeah,
So I don't know, but I mean, Lebanese today are very successful outside Lebanon, and
they
they've
are.
been very, I mean, prosperous and in all fields and everything. And here in Lebanon, we have the spirit of the Phoenix that everything is going to change. We're reviving every now and then, but it's like something we have to endure I mean, the politics in Lebanon also, and the economical situation is somehow what is keeping us from moving forward. Because probably because I mean uh, the political system and the cultural system in Lebanon is not well, and it has to be. We have to change it, and because it's been like this for like 30 years,
Yeah.
so it's gonna be difficult. But I think we're now moving into a change. I believe that something big is going to happen, and Lebanon will rise again, and it should rise because it has played a role in the history of mankind, and it should continue to play that role.
Yeah,
If you
and
know what I mean.
you have the best food in the Middle East too. So there you go.
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
yes, I feel for Lebanon. I've been watching it for decades now, watching it fall apart, and uh, I think that what happens is that, and it's starting to happen here in the United States, is the corruption becomes so huge that nobody can actually have the freedom to do things that don't get them in trouble. So then everybody freezes and nobody does anything. And that's the problem that is actually, it was in Lebanon for 30 or 40 years, but now it's starting to, the whole world is starting to become like Lebanon, and factions against factions and things like that. And I think that I think that the world is going to have to go into uh, a, a large chaos before we can straighten ourselves out. And I think that this is all part of it. So I am a hopeful person, and I think that we are going in the right direction. And as we can release some of the information like we're talking about here, so people understand who they are and where they came from, and that would help alleviate some of the dark situations that are going on right now. I don't think I've ever seen the world more dark than I see it now. It's like there doesn't seem to be much hope for us as a species, but at the same time, anything can happen, anything. And so the Phoenicians, if you're out there and you're listening, uh, you guys need to do something, you know? But let me ask you a couple other
yeah.
things, because this is a way out question, but there is a lot of evidence that there are uh, what they call USOs, under water submersible objects, un, unrecognized submersible objects that are seen by navies and sailors. And I know people who were in the Navy who saw these UFOs that would come right out of the water and fly around and go right back down into the water. And so there seems to be a some kind of sea culture that we don't know about. It would seem to me that the first people to get out into the open sea would probably meet these people. Would you agree with that?
I don't know. There is some kind of of tradition, or some kind of, drawings that shows sea people, and these drawings are connected to they were drawn by the Phoenicians, as if they are mermaids or as they are
Yeah.
sea creatures. I've seen some drawings about concerning that. But I don't know if I have no idea if this is some kind of an advanced civilization that exists in the down in the oceans, or these are just creatures like any other creatures that exist on Earth or in the water. Yeah, but we don't have that. I mean, it's not clear. But what is clear is that the Phoenicians mastered the root of the water, and I mean, which means that they know something. Maybe they knew that. Maybe they
Yep.
had information that they kept it secret. Maybe because when they used to go by sea and they used to divert, uh, people used to follow them, try to follow them to imitate the route. So they used to divert them, which means that they used to know all navigation routes in all oceans and in all seas, and that's very important. And the other people who used to follow them to understand their secrets, they used to, I mean, the ships they just went down the water and they were, sinking, which means that the Phoenicians also knew that if these followers are going to that path, their ships is going to sink, and this is very interesting.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They would lead the people that were following them into treacherous areas of the ocean, and then he would sink their boats, and the Phoenicians would go on doing what they were going to do anyway, and which is really brilliant. I have to say that is absolutely the brilliance, the fact that we don't have historical, you've put it together, but no historian has really put it together in a way that feels satisfactory. And that's because the Phoenicians kept everything so secret, which is the problem. But over and over and over again, we see that. And so if you look at the history of the Navy, the navies, I mean, it went from Phoenicia to Rome, then 1,000 years later, Spain and Portugal, and then England, and of course the Vikings. And then eventually it became the United States Navy, became the predominant Navy, which it still is and will be for a long time. And you look at in American politics, and in the military, the Navy is the predominant military. It's the top dog in American military. And the Office of Naval Intelligence was the original intelligence agency for the United States, later superseded by the CIA, but the ONI, the Office of Naval Intelligence, still thinks that they're the top dog, and they may be. And so we see that the entire world trade, since World War II because before World War II, there were pirates and people stealing things out on the open seas. But after World War II, the United States Navy said to the world, we will protect the entire world so we can have free trade. And so the world rose up because of that free trade protected by the U.S. Navy. And again, it's very Phoenician, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's mirroring. This is mirroring the strategy of the Phoenicians when they opened the world for trade and for interrelation between cultures, while they were dominating the sea. Even the Mediterranean Sea was called at once in history the Phoenician waters.
Yeah, that's right.
And definitely they. So, but what happened is, that's, I mean, the same strategy that the United States is doing as now they're controlling the world. It is the same as the Phoenician used when they were controlling the world. Yeah,
That's
definitely.
right.
Same.
Yeah, it's this weird weird thing of sea boats and navies protecting the world and trade, and as if the Phoenicians had created the mechanisms necessary for a world to get along with each other.
Yeah, yeah. But it's interesting what you said about about the power that the Navy has in controlling, as top agencies in the United States. I didn't notice that before. Now I'm hearing it from you that it's them who somehow. You mean what you mean is that it's somehow they are at the top of the pyramid. That's what you're saying.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and we didn't have to do that. I mean, it literally costing American people billions of dollars a year to keep this Navy going, and we're not really
Yeah.
getting anything out of it. If Lebanon is able to trade with, Algeria because the waters are protected by the U.S. Navy, we don't get anything out of it. So American people are not even asking themselves, why are we financing, the protection of the entire oceans of the world, right? Yet we are, and I'm not saying I'm not against it. I think it's a good thing, but it is an odd thing. I mean, literally, our military budget is what, $1.5 trillion a year, which is just unbelievable amounts of money, and I have no idea where it's coming from either. I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, is it Phoenician money magic or something? Because I mean, how the United States is producing the amount of money that it's producing to keep this machine going, if you do the math, it doesn't make any sense. There is not, even if every American paid all the money that they made into the fund, it wouldn't be enough money. So there's some kind
Yeah.
of weird thing going on where we're able to finance things with money that doesn't exist. And to me, I just I don't get it, and I don't see how it can go on. But it looks as if it's some kind of it looks like there's some kind of goal, is what I'm saying. Like, we don't understand
Yeah.
what the goal is, but there's some kind of goal, and I suspect that the goal is exactly what the Phoenicians were doing all that time, is to create a one world order ruled by trade, protected by an international navy that ensures that everyone can trade with each other, and that pirates and those kinds of things are kept in check. Which brings up another subject. Who were the pirates? The pirates of the 15th, 16th, and 17th century. They knew where all the places to stash stuff were. They knew the routes of the Spanish and what kind of gold they had on their boats. I'm actually wondering if the pirates themselves weren't renegade Phoenicians.
Yeah. Maybe I don't know. I have no idea about that. But that could be something.
Yeah, I mean,
So
they were great sailors, and they had intelligence, that the other people didn't have, and they knew where to go to hide out. And you just got to wonder if when a pirate ship would take over a boat, like say a Spanish boat, the first thing that they would do was go grab the maps. I don't know if you knew that. That's the first thing that they would steal. Yeah, that would be the map. That was the most, not the gold, not the slaves. It would be the maps. That would be the most important thing that they could steal, and they would copy them immediately, right? And so maps were the greatest thing that these pirates could get. And so and then
so
you go ahead.
if these pirates attacked boats and got the maps, to know more about the oceans, that means they were not Phoenicians, because the Phoenicians they
Good
knew
point.
all the oceans.
Good point.
Yeah.
So probably the pirates knew about the Phoenicians and were trying to um, get all the intelligence, but they were basically just outlaws. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so it's an incredibly fascinating subject. And again, my guest has written, I want to make sure I got this down, many books actually on the Phoenicians, Karim Koussa, and they're on Amazon, and they're amazing books. Like no one has really approached the subject like you have, and that's why I appreciate your work because I only really came into all of this about 5 years ago, studying alchemy, and then realizing that a lot of the alchemical traditions came from Phoenicia originally, and there's many references in the alchemical books to Phoenicia. So that's how I came into it, and I just really appreciate what you've done in bringing the subject to the public.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jay. And yeah, mentioning the alchemical process, I mean, the Murex, the invention of the Murex, the dye purple from the Murex, it's an alchemical process. The
Yeah.
healing that happened in with the god Ashmun mentioned in the city of Sidon,
Yep.
it's alchemical. How he started to treat people through the knowledge of herbs and everything thousands of years ago. So it's and turning that into a kind of a medicine.
Yep.
So I mean, and plus the secret knowledge of the alchemy, which goes beyond that and into the consciousness and spirituality, also played a part in Phoenicia and Egypt together. Uh, you know, because alchemy is also coming from the word kemet from
Yep.
in Egypt,
Yep.
which is the same. They have the same culture together and
Yeah.
probably the same knowledge. So yeah, I mean, this is evident.
Yeah, and then we have Jason and the Argonauts, the myth
Yeah,
of these people on a boat looking for the golden fleece, which is the alchemy of it all, and so we see that these same stories kind of going over and around through mythology, always pointing back to the fact that someone had gone out into the open sea first and brought back the secrets of herbology and mineralogy and all these things and brought it back into the Middle East. And they were the purveyors of the culture. They created the Bronze Age. They created the Iron Age. They created the ships, the great ships. And if you look at Baalbek, it looks like the original way of a cutting stone was originally there in Lebanon, and it certainly looks like the Egyptians got that technology from the Phoenicians and were able to cut the obelisks out of pure granite, which we still don't understand how they did this to this day. And
yeah, yeah.
it's
There,
it's,
yeah,
it's
there is
amazing.
a tradition. There is a tradition that it was actually Cain who is the son of Enoch
Yeah,
who built Baalbek, and the previous name of Baalbek was Enochia, which can be rendered as Phoenicia or can be rendered as coming from Enoch uh,
right.
as a memorial. And it seems that if you read the book of Enoch, you understand that this technology, I mean, astronomy, astrology, and
Yep,
the art of masonry was given by Uriel, who is presented as an archangel in the book of Enoch.
that's right.
Uh, he instructed him into this to Enoch, and Enoch gave it to his son. And I mean, Baalbek is old. It could be like 10,000 years. We have evidence
Easy.
that goes back to, I mean, habitation, uh, but uh, temples and there is actually a temple of Enoch in Baalbek, probably the first one. It's on the top of a hill overlooking the structure of Baalbek. It could be even ancient. older than the temple of Baal and the other temples in Baalbek. But definitely, this is, I mean, this technology, this Masonic tradition of building is given by by superior beings, whether you call them angels or whoever are these beings are, to build those amazing and gigantic megalithic edifices. The Romans, I mean, they played a role in Baalbek, but only at that time they just built something over the Phoenician temples. You know, this is how they do it everywhere.
Yeah.
And even in Rome itself, they didn't build and they didn't quarry stones as big as the one that were quarried in Baalbek. I mean, you know, it's 1,000 tons, 1,200 tons, 1,600 tons a rock. That does not exist even in Rome. So it's not the Romans who created those big rocks. Yeah.
No, nobody. Uh, Pre-dynastic Egypt would be when these things were built, not dynastic Egypt, before dynastic Egypt. That's when the real stuff was really being built. We can't do it today. We cannot build these things today. We don't know how they built them. They had to have had something, high-powered saws, something to build these things. Then there comes, how did they move them? You know, how did they move, 1,500-ton obelisk from the top of the Nile down to where Cairo is now, and what kind of boat do they have to do this? And I mean, it begs so many questions. And one thing people don't realize, and they probably know it, but they don't realize it, is that the Jewish tradition, the Hebrew tradition, is Phoenician. Hiram Abiff is who built Solomon's temple. And so even that tradition comes from this. So we can see that that all of the really great traditions really started in this area of the world and moved outwards. And that's why it's so important that we look at it and examine it.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, you see the influence of the Phoenicians on the Jewish religion. It's there. You see it. I mean, they used to worship a god. They brought him from they brought this god with them from Iraq, in ancient Iraq. Yahweh was a Chaldean god and became Yahweh, and then suddenly they started to worship El.
Yeah.
So so they took from the Phoenicians. They were influenced by the Phoenicians when they arrived here, and the Persians played a role in somehow. Cyrus II. When he played a role in hiding this in the Old Testament.
Yep.
But when you dig, you understand how it went, how it happened. But there is definitely the strongest connection that has been. It's there. You can see it. It's the connection between the Phoenicians and the Egyptians. And the connections, somehow it's there between the Phoenicians and the Greeks,
Yep.
Who were greatly inspired by the Phoenicians. And even Pythagoras himself, the philosopher, was Phoenician, and Thales, who taught Pythagoras, was Phoenician. So, I mean, they played their role not only in trade and in seafaring, but in culture, in knowledge, in religion, the monotheistic belief, the pantheon of gods, the assembly of gods. Yep. They had a whole system managed together secretly. That's why maybe that's this is the success, and this is the curse because we don't actually know it for sure. We're trying. Some of the tradition is oral, and some is what has been written about the Phoenicians from other people. Yeah.
Yeah, truly a remarkable people that have not gotten the credit for what they really accomplished, and maybe that's time that that changes. Um, hey, Karim, it's been really good visiting with you, and I hope you have a good holidays here as we close out the year and a nice new year coming. And really appreciate your work and think that you really added something to the history of people that are not really well known.
Thank you so much, Jay. Merry Christmas to all. And hope finally we can, this year, 2023, will be a better year for all of us. Hopefully.
Yes. Yeah, 2022
Yeah.
was a rough year for everybody. And let's hope it gets better because it has. All right. Anyway, I'm Jay Weidner. This
Yeah.
is Reality Check. We've been talking to Karim El Koussa about the Phoenicians. I will link his Amazon page and his books to the link, and you guys can go read his books. They're very entertaining and knowledgeable, and you will gain an understanding of a people that really deserve more credit than they have been given in history. Anyway, I'm Jay Weidner. Thanks for watching. It's really been good, and I'll be back hopefully soon. See you later.